Hello, my name's Elijah Wells, and today's review is Paul King's new movie, Wonka. The story follows Willy Wonka, portrayed by Timothy Chalamet, as basically his earlier days where he's tried to set himself up as a chocolatier, and how he established himself, and how he got to where he was, and how his conquest to be the greatest chocolatier the world's ever known was a pretty steep one at best, and how the conquest would I say almost costed him dearly. Based off a very famous a character from the Willy Wonka and the Charlie and Chocolate Factory from Roald Dahl. Of course, there are two previous adaptations of the film. One starring Gene Wilder and the other starring Johnny Depp. Of course, Gene Wilder is dead, unfortunately, and Johnny Depp's career is now on life support at this point, so it's going to be up to Timothy Chalamet to basically take up the mantle of one of the most famous people in literature history. And particularly knowing this one's going to be varying completely differently from the previous two adaptations, as it's going to be all about him, essentially acting as a prequel all around him and how he became a very famous chocolatier, like is depicted in the movie. Even though my anticipation for this movie is somewhat okay, it's very hard to challenge Gene Wilder, who's my favourite Willy Wonka. Well, I'll just see how it goes, and judging from the guy who did Paddington, it should be really good. And it's also produced by the guy who did Harry Potter, which should be fairly problematic. But again, knowing Paul King's in the films, directing the film, and how much I like the Paddington movies, this should be a treat that is just as tasty as chocolate. And the movie is actually kind of decent. The movie, very much like the Gene Wilder film, does capture the more theatrical and more musical fusions of the Roald Dahl book it was based on, and definitely differs away from the Johnny Depp movie, which in my opinion just kind of differentiates its tone too much to the point that never feels concise of what I wanted to be. But for Wonka, its identity is definitely very crystal clear, as it leans a little bit more further towards Gene Wilder with the more whimsical take and a more of a optimistic and more cheery approach, like tone-wise, of the film. And also, it does feel like it does recapture a lot of the sets and definitely the costuming work of Willy Wonka. More into the same line of Gene Wilder, since that's a little bit more reminiscent around that era, which is something I do kind of picked up on a little bit on this film. The movie does go into themes of corporate greed, as throughout the entirety of the subplot, or the main pillar of this movie, is that Willy Wonka is unfortunately being pinned against the massive chocolate crime syndicate or cartel, being Slugworth, Pen-Nose, Grouper, which are again more reminiscent of Roald Dahl names with the whimsically rhyming names that he's known for. So they basically watered down their chocolate to essentially to the point where they own almost like a monopoly of chocolate, in the town. To the point they bribe officials, bribe police, and bribe the police officers to basically keep their shady business pretty much on the low, to say the least. And also, Willy Wonka does go into fall into a brunt of exploitation, as he's unfortunately has to pay off a massive debt from basically what I imagine must be the worst hotel to go to, as in 1 shilling a night. But if you don't pay that 1 shilling a night, you're going to spend 10,000 shillings to basically work in a very shady laundrette, which involves an accountant, a plumber, a comedian, a telephone operator, and a literal child called Noodle. Basically, the hotel runs almost, in a sense, basically some child trafficking and human exploitation at this point. From what I also understand, it basically shows Willy Wonka's major progression from essentially still having a sense of optimism, even though he's going to have to start all over again from square one. He turned up with only 1 shilling a night and only has to work essentially 10,000 days, being essentially 27 years, if we count in days, to work there. And he has this almost insanity optimism and to essentially just not just work the full 10,000 days, but find a way out, find all the loopholes, and find all the way that hotels work and how to slip essentially through the cracks, which is something which is also overlooked in the movies, but more particularly in the books, where how he does love to scheme even through dire situations. There are plenty of good things about Willy Wonka, or the Wonka film by Paul King, but there are definitely some things that just doesn't make too much of a sense. But in my opinion, there's the one big elephant in the room, that Willy Wonka, if you know from the two films and the book, that he does become a very withdrawn, a very almost secluded figure in the lore of Willy Wonka and the lore of Roald Dahl, as in pretty much the reason why he sent out the 5 to golden tickets is essentially a sneak preview of the factory, which ever since he laid off all these workers and probably didn't give them severance pay, is that just to give them a sneak peek, and also some Oompa Loompas. Again, this is something that it should have been capped on a little bit more, is that he might be going down to the path that we may have to cut people away or push people away, like something that's been foretold in the film and the books. Like, he just becomes a very private and very withdrawn figure. Like, I think it's just a case that he kind of feels a bit of an extrovert who's trying to just who's just trying to please everyone, trying to make a name for himself. But again, in the books, his brain's essentially just become fried up. Like, he just kind of feels a bit sad, and of course, he gives the factory to Charlie. And another big talking point in the film is casting of Hugh Grant as an Oompa Loompa, or Donald Trump. I mean, Oompa Loompa. There have been some controversies of having an actor with dwarfism to play the role of an Oompa Loompa, and having Hugh Grant play him, which is, again, totally understandable. But I did like his performance, even though he did say in a very recent interview that he could not stand this movie whatsoever, which a little bit surprising, because you're literally promoting a movie which is a little bit silly, unless if you're Josh Trank for Fantastic Four. But again, I feel like he does give out a really good performance, and he does shine, particularly in the second half of the film, where he's definitely a little bit more prominent in the film, in my opinion. But again, he does, as a lot of the cast members, particularly Keegan-Michael Key and Sally Hawkins in that brief performance. Rowan Atkinson is actually really good. And of course, Olivia Colman, who is definitely one of my favourite actresses at the moment. She's also really great in this movie, as this overarching, very exploitative, horrible hotel owner, as well as the Chocolate Cartel, who are very captivating villains, and so forth. Again, I don't think I've mentioned this in the review so far, but this movie is essentially a musical. Again, it is very musical heavy, in my opinion. Again, Pure Imagination is the most famous song of the entire musical, but there's also some good songs like Half Full of Dreams, Scrub Scrub, and Sweet Tooth, which are some really good songs in my opinion. I think my favourite, outside of Pure Imagination, which is definitely my favourite song of this, but I think it's maybe a Sweet Tooth with the Chocolate Cartel in the film, which is again a very weirdly captivating song, almost tailor-made for a Broadway or West End musical, in my opinion. Now, how does Timothée Chalamet stand up against Johnny Depp or Gene Wilder? I think he is definitely better than Johnny Depp, who just comes off very creepy, in my opinion, since there's been a lot of rumours that he's by this performance of Michael Jackson and Marilyn Manson, who unfortunately were both very prolific abusers, which he has since denied, and also the movie unfortunately has been exploited in a weird way due to his Amber Heard situation, which is kind of dumb in my opinion. But but he's not Gene Wilder. Like, he does all he can, but I feel like Gene Wilder feels the more human out of the three performances. He's just, like, in my opinion, Gene Wilder is just someone who just wanted to make the world happy, even though he's just an unbelievably miserable person deep inside. Like, you get nothing, you lose, good day, sir. Like, this was probably the best scene throughout the first Willy Wonka film from 1971, I think it was. But I feel like this is a person who's just he just wanted to be loved, he just wanted to have friends, he just wanted to be acknowledged. Like, I feel like Wonka, or the Timothée Chalamet one, is, if it does get a sequel, it's going to have to go through the brunt of what Gene Wilder had went through, as in, like, does become more withdrawn, he does become more private, he does become more secluded, which is somewhat of a law of Willy Wonka, which is something I do like, in my opinion. Like, it almost adds a sense of mystery, which, again, knowing that this is the entirety, this character is the entirety of the movie, kind of robs it a titty bit, in my opinion. Although it does lack the mystery of all the Willy Wonkas that came before him. The movie, if we're comparing it to chocolate, it does go to my sweet tooth. It's a very flavorfully good one. The designs, both in the costumes and both in the production design, is actually really top notch. The music in the movie is really good as well, and it's very smooth as well. The performance of Timothée Chalamet in particular, and Olivia Colman, Hugh Grant, and Rowan Atkinson and Keegan-Michael Key all give out great performances. And the kind of the ideology of corporate greed and worker exploitation is also really a major standout for me, in my opinion. And even though it does tread into some fairly awkward territory, as in, he does come off as a very helpful, just want to please everyone extrovert, even though in the novel and the two films he's basically a broken introvert, which is a little bit of a strange change in my opinion. But all in all, I definitely do enjoy this. I do firmly recommend Wonka, so I'm feeling a 7 out of 10. So, what do you think of the new Wonka movie? Comment down below, subscribe to my channel, like this video, and follow me on Twitter and Instagram, and also find me on Letterboxd. And this is Elijah Wells, and bye!